Chris was completely serious when he said I did drink 2 espresso shots right before coming because we have 65 slides we're going to go through in the next 50 minutes. Buckle up. I don't know if the pews are equipped with that, but we are going to literally be traveling around the world. And as we talk about this wonderful theme, closing out your summer series on Go, specifically, we're talking about going into all of the world. The Keller Church of Christ is extremely special to our family. It was 4 years ago and one day, to be exact, last time we were working as one of the ministers here. I think I took this picture, not that one, if I can go back here, that one, on our way out from the parking lot. But this congregation is so special, and we love every opportunity we have to come back and being here. This was the same congregation right here in this baptistry back in October of 2005, where I said, I believe Jesus is Lord, was baptized into Christ, born again, added to his church. It was the same place where my wife and I, a few years later, got married, and almost 15 years of marriage now. It's crazy. And since then, we've had 4 kids. And a couple of those happened while we were here. That year was wonderful because you put a table out there. We had diapers and wipes that saved us literally the entire year. It was amazing. Diapers are so expensive if you don't have children right now or you've had them. You know it was a very special gift that we received. And of course, we spent years working with the youth and family here. Things like Lads Leaders Camps and Retreats. So we love the Keller Church, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to be here tonight. But since then, a lot has happened. There's been numerous opportunities that the Lord has presented to us, different mission opportunities, travel opportunities. People think I'm crazy when I say I literally want to see every country in this world. And so far, I think there's 43 so far, and more in the horizon if the Lord will allow. The door for mission opportunities is amazing. If you just start seeing and seeking, God has opened numerous doors, and we're thankful for the support that we receive from so many people. I have other pictures I'll be showing you and expressing my gratitude even to Keller for helping with one effort specifically. But right now, it's an evangelism sermon. You're thinking right now, another evangelism sermon, another one. And if you're like me, I do leave these kind of lessons about the commission, that great commission that the scriptures reveal in Matthew 28, Mark 16, Luke 24. And I always have these different kinds of emotions. Sometimes I leave, most of the time, I'll be honest, I leave relatively guilty. I'm like, I'm not doing enough. I have barely made a dent. I barely scratched the surface. I know I fall short. I know I need to be penitent. I know I need to continue to share the good news of Jesus Christ. It is indicative. It is imperative. It's something that I just have to do. It's part of my salvation. And then other times I'll hear people give a presentation on some sort of work or a place they've been or a trip, and then I get energized. I'm fired up. I'm so thankful that the Lord is working through that person or that group or that team and that area. I'm thinking this is indeed a global mission full of soldiers from every platform, every language, every background, and collectively some amazing things are happening. I do want you to leave here this evening not feeling guilty. I want us, in a sense, to feel empowered. I want us to leave here more optimistic, and I'll really emphasize this in the latter points in the sense that going into all the world isn't something that's just been quoted for the last 2,000 years. It is very much a realistic possibility. And I want to share with you how it can be achievable in 2023 and if the Lord doesn't return in the coming years. And so when we talk about the Great Commission, we obviously can talk about going physically to another location. And that's important. Go into all nations, all the different places. But in the more literal rendering of the Great Commission, as you're going, as you are going, meaning it's something hopefully you're already doing. It's not something you just do later on or compartmentalize. It's really just who you are. It's as you go as a Christian, the verb is really emphasizing to make disciples. How do you do it? You baptize them, and then you teach them to continue doing the very thing that he's telling them to do at that moment, which is to make disciples. And so, in a sense, we already are in a mission field. And I'll show you some pictures here in a few moments. It begins right here, right in your own family, right in your immediate family, your extended family, right in your communities, domestic and international. And I'll even try to emphasize this later on today, that there are no tiers to mission work. It begins with every single soul being valuable. Every soul is important. And it doesn't matter if it's a person in a continent of Africa or Asia or Europe, they're just as important and as unique and precious in the eyes of God right here in Keller, Texas. I remember a book title I saw years ago said, "Go ye" means go me. And again, the reason why that title is applicable is because of the cyclical nature of the commission. The idea that I'm the result of the Great Commission. 2,000 years after Jesus said to go into all nations and teach the gospel, he said how? Baptizing them and then teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you. What he commanded them to do was to likewise make disciples. And therefore, it's a continual cyclical cycle that we see of new disciples making new disciples. And so, if you ever noticed, by the way, when you're reading through the Great Commission accounts in the Gospels, you don't ever actually read like the adjective great. We typically add the word great before commission, that charge, that imperative to go out into the world. But we add the word great, really, if you look earlier in Jesus' teachings, he had what you would call a limited commission to go into like a select group of people. But this was at the end, right before his ascension. He's saying all nations is your audience. This is whatever adjective you want to use. I know in the podcast earlier today with Dylan and Chris, we used some other adjectives in great, massive, humongous. It doesn't really matter. It's all 195 countries, a few territories, the 900 languages, 7,000 actually, some tribal tongues that are out there. We crossed the 8 billion mark back in November. It's for everybody. That's how massive of a commission we are talking about. And the field, again, is local, domestic, and international. And I'm so glad when I discuss missions with people that we tend to all agree once we start talking about souls, that every soul is important. Every soul. I love how certain missions committees and congregations and elderships, they set their missions up with this mindset that it's all, whether you're investing domestically or locally or internationally, it's all important. I have like 63 more slides, but most of them are pictures. You'll see here in a few moments. And of course, going can be physical or can be virtual. Let me just do a quick survey of the book of Acts. In the book of Acts, we see how did the early church go? How the early church went. Once we go through just a quick survey of the book of Acts, you'll see how they were in the process of where they went. They made disciples. We see at the very beginning when the church began, in religious gatherings and religious feasts, the Feast of Pentecost, you had gospel preaching in that first day of the church. You see it in accounts of benevolence beginning in Acts chapter 3. The lame man is asking to be healed, and he's like, hey, money and gold I don't have, silver and gold I don't have, but one thing I do, in the name of Jesus Christ. He was able to heal him. And you see benevolence in chapter 4, verses 32 through 37, again with the widows and their who are being neglected in the daily distribution. But nevertheless, with benevolence and care, there was good news teaching and preaching in those who were involved in that service. In Acts chapter 5, verse 42, one of the most restoration type models of outreach that we could do is house to house. I mean, that was what they were doing in Acts chapter 5, verse 42. They did not neglect to go house to house. And I get it. I have lots of people push back against me when I organize efforts. And every time there is success from it. Every time there are seeds planted and every time there are contacts that are made. Maybe it's it's obviously not the best model of outreach, but definitely a biblical model and an effective model in any country, including Western societies. I've seen it. Also, in the book of Acts, chapter 7, and feeding into the first verse of chapter 8, when you had persecution and migration taking place in the first century church, wherever they went after the stoning of Stephen, they left Jerusalem, they went to different parts of the known world, and guess what they took with them? They took the gospel with them, and the church was being established everywhere there was gospel preaching and obeying taking place, and that's evidenced in the rest of the New Testament. I'll have a few more comments about that when I talk about Western Europe and some of the mission work taking place there. We see in the early church, it happened, of course, while traveling as they went. When someone's traveling, going from Jerusalem to Gaza on a chariot, and all of a sudden you have Philip who's able to share the gospel to the Ethiopian eunuch. You see it in new demographics. there in Acts chapter 10. Of course, that's where Peter goes to speak to a new group of people, a different kind of audience that he was not accustomed to teaching and being around, a non-Jewish Gentile audience, and yet he was commissioned and charged to go there, and he preached the gospel. And of course, that led to report sharing and good news sharing in Acts 6, and those good reports and good news spread like wildfires. They continued to share the good news wherever they went and reporting that message. You see it, of course, in prison gospel sharing in Acts chapter 12 with Peter, Acts 16 with Paul. You see it via sailing to new areas. They didn't have planes or cars, but they did use the means that were available as Paul is sailing on various mission trips to go from point A to point B and then to point C. And of course, we see it through short-term campaigns, which I'm a big proponent of that. I believe there's value in long-term missionaries, but there's very much power that can come from short-term campaigns. I mean, just ask anybody from the Keller Church who went to Costa Rica recently. You can do a lot of good in a short period of time if it's very focused and purposeful, and it involves resource sharing and preaching and teaching. Good can come. And biblically speaking, in the book of Acts, you see it happening through short-term campaigns. Of course, you see it in social gatherings. You see good news teaching and gospel evangelism. You see it when they're discussing philosophy in Mars Hill, and Paul's able to teach Christ in that scenario. You see it in worship services in Acts 10. And of course, in political settings and trials and being in front of different types of environments. It didn't matter. That's the whole point. Wherever they were, wherever the first century disciples were, our brethren were, they found a way to still point people to Christ and to bring him up as part of the conversation. And so as you go, it begins. It begins in your immediate family. This picture was taken about a month ago, and that was definitely a highlight of being a parent, having our oldest son, Landon, obeyed the gospel a month ago. Oh boy, I said I wasn't going to get choked up. But this is what it's all about. You know, I've worked with youth groups for a long time, but I would tell people, my 4 kids, that's really my core group that I'm working with, that God has challenged me to train up the way they should go. So going to your immediate family, that's where evangelism is starting, right? My own household. Of course, in my extended family. I was just talking to Candace about this on the way here, trying to remember the approximate date when this scenario. I don't intend for you to read this conversation. I'm just going to make a few comments about this conversation. Some of the first people that I just had to share the gospel with were brothers and sisters and best friends. And so thankfully, some of them decided to say Jesus is Lord. The gospel pricked their heart. They believed it, and they were baptized into Christ. Right here, actually, some of them. I just kind of remember because I'll never forget the first baptism I did in this baptistry, because I went up there alone. I didn't really know what I was supposed to be doing. Put my brother in those waders that the person who's doing the baptizing is supposed to wear. I put him in those, and so whenever he was being immersed, water filled up the waders. And so I had to kind of use a little extra strength to pull him up. But never did that again, but definitely memorable. Now, I remember when we came out the doors, though, lots of hugs, lots of joy and singing and prayer together. It was wonderful. But I remember like one brother specifically was like, now the evil one's going to come after you. I'm like, whoa, embrace the moment. But for some reason now, 17 years later, I'm remembering those kind of comments from this one brother. You better be ready. The evil one's going to come after you. Stay strong, stay focused. And he meant it. And he meant it because when you look at the parable of the sowers, sometimes seed isn't planted always in the best of ground. Sometimes thorns and rocks come up. And unfortunately, my brother had fallen away from the church for more than a decade. Was never super grounded in the faith. I mean, he knew the gospel. But something amazing happened about 6 months ago. Sorry. Sometimes we mature when we get older, we get married, have kids, and he definitely has been doing that. He has a successful secular career, and then he started reading a bunch of books and self-help books, and he's like, I'm going to start reading the Bible again. And so he started reading the Bible. When I say read the Bible, we're talking since the first of the year, he's read the Bible twice since then. And he was calling me, you can ask Candace, he would call me daily with questions. I mean, it was sometimes when he called me, I'm like, oh, the next hour is going to be taken. But I knew it was important. I knew it doesn't matter what's happening. If I couldn't answer him, I'd call him later. But he started asking all sorts of just great questions about the scriptures, about God, about his nature. Long story short, this conversation was happening. He lives out by San Francisco with a preacher in that area. I started talking to him, saying, hey, my brother is starting, he wants to be restored to the church. He understood his baptism, but he knows he's not in the church right now. He's not worshiping with the church. And so long story short, we got him connected. He was restored to the church about a month ago, placed membership with the congregation outside of San Francisco, and I thank the Lord for that. That was only supposed to last 10 seconds, that slide, so let's keep going. Go to your extended family. Go local. Local, not loco, go local. All of this is important. I love this evangelism table that's right around the corner here. I'm trying to think if I either stole that idea or y'all stole it from me. It doesn't matter. We're both doing it, and it's a great thing, offering resources and tools, and other churches do the same thing. Every person in Keller, Texas, every resident has a soul. Everybody matters. I'm huge. I believe in door knocking. It may not be the most successful statistical plan for outreach, but I know and I see it work every single time we do it. We do it the first Saturday every single month, and every time we come away with context for prayers or Bible questions, I'll be happy to share with you some tips that we use to gain contacts. There is a Brotherhood Door Knocking Day that a lot of Churches of Christ have been doing it's like that first Saturday in October. I highly recommend you guys consider doing that, or you can come hang out with me if you want for the day, and do a Brotherhood Door Knocking Day. Go domestic. Again, it starts right in our own country as well. I have a whole lot to say about the mission field in the United States right now, but this is a picture, by the way, with maybe if you zoom in, you can't zoom in, but many of you in this room are in that picture. We brought like 50 people that year to the Indian reservation, which was logistically fun and challenging, but it was so rewarding and so important. I know, Keller, we went to the reservation area at least twice. Last year, we took a group up to New Hampshire, the year before that to Maryland. I'm really going to be drawn to places where the church is smaller and struggling and less connected, and we think of how places like Keller can really share some resources, give them a boost, provide some impact. And so domestic missions is just as important as even international missions. This was a picture from about 3 weeks ago. We took 23 people over to Wales in the United Kingdom. And again, a lot of people, almost everybody in this picture, took vacation time, spent their own money to go, because it's hard to raise money to go to Europe. Most people think, oh, you're just going to go on vacation. Are you really doing mission work there? Yes. The Western Europe it's a very sad reality of what has happened over the years in Christian areas and Christian nations. And statistically across the board, the states tend to follow a lot of the trends and stats of places like the UK. Right here in Wales, there's only one, I have to tell people two now, but there was one Church of Christ for the last couple decades that met in Wales. One Church of Christ, about 30 minutes out of the capital of Cardiff, near the Bristol, England, near the English border, one congregation. And we went there last year and spent some time and surveyed it with the hope of bringing a group this year, which it all came to fruition. It was very wonderful. Thankfully, there's now a second congregation. 2 families are living in the other side of Wales, about an hour and a half from Newport, and they're meeting in their home. So I'm like, hey, there's another congregation there now. And they came to visit us on that Sunday, and we were able to share some resources with them. And each picture I could talk forever, and I need to keep going. But I love this team here because we had 2 elders, there were 3 deacons, we had a couple preachers, we had kids, like 5 college students. I loved it. A nice, diverse group that everybody was able to bring something to the table. So go international. It's important as well. They're all equal. And so what do we do with all this? Go also to receptive fields. There are places where you can go. If you want to go with me somewhere, I'll take you to a place where you'll witness at least a couple dozen baptisms in 1 week, where people are receptive to the good news of Jesus Christ. They say, Jesus is Lord. Tell me what to do. Show me what the Bible says. You show them and they'll get baptized. It's not very difficult in some areas. But there's also fields that are extremely difficult. And I'll show you some slides at the very end of this presentation on a recent trip I took to Pakistan, and how you want to talk about a difficult field. You talk about a place that's the 5th most populated country in the world. You got a quarter of a billion people living there, with 97% that are Islam, 3% non-Islam, which includes everything from Christendom and Sikhism and all these different even types of religions. The Christian church is just a very small portion of that country. And little would you probably know, that there's actually quite a few churches of Christ spread throughout there. And we're working with the school there, and I'll tell you about that in the latter part of this lesson. So how is the church going today? What are we doing today? And I'm here to say we're going. We are going wherever we go. It begins right here. I know what I see in things like social media, local churches do a good job inviting the community. There's no one uninvited. It's very open. There's websites. There's open invitation. People can come through the doors. There are flyers that are distributed by hand or with mailers. When there's VBSs, people are promoting or paying for advertising online. People use good magazines like House to House, Heart to Heart. There are a lot of things we're trying to do locally in extending an invitation, which to me is the success. The success is giving people a chance to grasp the seed and to have it planted in their heart. And then, of course, we can be part of the watering and then watch God do his thing, watch him give the growth. I'm really impressed with programs like World Bible School that's been around for quite some time. They are transitioning pretty much to 100% online, which is better. I've met with the brethren there, and statistically, when you would mail a correspondence lesson, it may never get there, or it may get there months later in a very slow process. But now everything's online, and the studies are going quicker and faster. You can actually make a custom link, a World Bible School /your name link that you can text people, and I'll show you how to do it. I'm doing a study right now with somebody from Wales that we met, and they can go through World Bible School, and you get to be their study helper, and it's all free and easy to use. Any age could do it. World Video Bible School, I'm a huge proponent of that. I'm going to show you a picture about some of the resources they offer the brethren. I think about American campaigns now. I'm seeing more and more domestic campaigns pop up. There was one recently in Cleburne near here. I know there's a big one in Tennessee. And of course, individual churches, I hear them periodically with youth groups and others doing short-term mission trips, working sometimes with smaller churches or whatever. Also, this is important. I'm seeing that the church today is really emphasizing a deep promotion of Christian apologetics. And I believe this is essential, too. The studies and the research, which I don't have time to go into, all lend to the support that we have to incorporate apologetic thought into most of our teachings. When talking about the Creator, the inspiration of Scriptures, defending the truth and morality, this is essential as part of our Christian teaching. The stats are actually quite alarming and depressing. The most recent Gallup poll, maybe you saw this, it came out very recently, last month or two. In America, in the last 2 decades, 91%, 2 decades ago, 2001, believed in God. Just the simple idea of believing in the higher power, God. That has dropped to 74% in 2 decades. That's in our country. It means 3 out of 4 people believe in God. A quarter of the individuals in this world struggle with just a simple existence of God, let alone the deeper side of trying to understand his revelation, his specific word, and how to follow him. And it's even more tragic when you go to the UK. We did a lot of studies on that as we were prepping on how to be prepared to do evangelism there. Their stats are even more alarming. In Wales, 47% of the country, it's granted it's only 3 million people, but 47% of the country identifies as having no religious affiliation. Not Christian, not Islam, not Hindu, nothing. No religious affiliation. I know that includes atheism, it includes unchurched people, and it includes agnosticism, but half the country, it's nothing. That's the fastest growing group in the UK. You look at England and Scotland as well, is the nuns, N-O-N-E, not N-U-N. The fastest growing group are the nuns. And we are, the states, by the way, are very much falling in that same path. And so therefore, we really emphasize Christian apologetics on our trip. Everything from the VBS that we decided to use, we called it HBC because they call it Holiday Bible Club there. They don't call it Vacation Bible School. So we had to change all our literature to HBC that we were promoting. But nevertheless, it was a very heavy focus on apologetics. Also, long, short-term missions. I've talked about that quite a bit. And how are we going? There's a lot of praying, which is great. It's essential. Jesus told us to pray for laborers, but the supporting of laborers and congregations like Keller blow me away when I see the amount of capital and funds that are raised for mission efforts. It's some of the biggest that I've seen. I know there may be a couple others that have topped Keller a little bit, but overall, this is a great giving congregation when it comes to an annual giving, and that's a part of it. It's very much part of it. Philippians chapter 1, of course, verse 3, the people who sinned and the people who go, they're all together. Everyone's a team there. One can't do it without the other. Everybody is needed in this mission. Let me just show you a few snapshots now. Over the last few years, some of the places where I've been going, specifically, we've been working with schools. And I know this is a big focus, at least historically with Keller's mission support, is that they focus on training international preachers. And I believe that's a great model, obviously, or I wouldn't be spending most of my time doing that as well, because if you train people in their own country, their own language, their own background, and then you're going to have a multiplication effect as a result. Like, there's only so much one little guy from Texas or somebody who's going overseas can do, but if you equip the locals where they are, then all of a sudden you're training people to go out and teach and preach and evangelize. There will be a multiplication effect. I may not see the immediate results. Maybe we'll see some people being added to the church on a trip, but what's happening is the fruit that will come later on through the education, through the training and teaching. So we've been able to work with the school in Matamoros, Mexico. This is a picture from, it's called Babati, Tanzania. It's about 3 hours actually from Arusha, the Andrew Connolly School of Preaching, which I believe you know quite a bit about here. David Bayi in the center there is a graduate of that school, the first graduating class some 2 decades ago, and he's directing the school that we're partnering with in Babati. It's about a 1 million person population in that region, and there are only about 4 small congregations. So there is a lot of evangelism that still can be done in that area, specifically where we end up planting this congregation / we end up having the school meet at the church. It's predominantly a Muslim area, we found out. Like, we found out because when we were going campaigning, everybody was Muslim. Yeah, we didn't do, I guess, an incredible amount of research on this location, but why not? To me, it's been very good, and people are coming to the church little by little. This picture is in Ghana, in a place called Joje, Ghana, a couple hours from Accra. This is one of the schools we worked with for a long time, called the Volta Bible College. This was taken last year, just taught a short course to the brethren there. This picture was in Monclova, Mexico. We went there a couple times within the last couple of years, and I don't know if this was, I guess I could do one here. It's not customary, but we totally did a selfie while preaching and teaching a short course with a school that we're working with in Monclova, Mexico, a couple hours south of Eagle Pass. This picture's from, we're working with a school out in Santa Ana, El Salvador, so a couple hours from San Salvador, and it's a Saturday school that meets for a couple years. They have students online and students that meet in person, but we're thankful to be training of people at this program. This was taken last year actually in Ghana, and this is actually 2 schools that had come together. The reason being, when I had gone to work there in Ghana, I was hoping to go into Togo as well, where the church is just exploding. Oh, I have so much to say about every one of these people and pictures. But the church is rapidly growing. It's very infant, but rapidly growing in Togo. It's the fastest growing Christian group, the church, in the entire country. The Churches of Christ are the fastest growing group in Togo. And I'm not exaggerating when I say there are thousands of people baptizing in campaigns. I was leery about it myself. But a brother who lives out in Searcy, that's on our team, he went and he watched it. He took pictures and saw thousands of people immersed in a 3-week span. It was amazing. But when we went to do class, we couldn't go into Togo because their COVID border lockdowns had continued all the way to 2022. They just recently had opened them up earlier this year. And so it was like, well, we can't go into Togo, but the brothers there somehow had a way of coming here. So the students were able to cross the border, but I wasn't able to cross it. Don't know how, but all I know is they all came together in a combined class. Problem is Ghana is English speaking and Togo's French speaking. Thankfully, there's a shared tribal language called Ewe, so we were able to at least teach we did a Hebrews course and using Ewe as the language. This was taken a couple months ago in Botswana. There's only one Church of Christ preaching school that's now there in Botswana, and the church is small, and they're training a few people, but they had about 6 students in this class. Now, I wanted to highlight this picture for a moment because Well, I was supposed to go to Pakistan last December, but believe it or not, the government declined my visa. It felt weird getting rejected. Like, I felt like I was in high school again, getting rejected again. I was like, what? This is what? And I'm like, I'm rejected. And I'm going to talk about that in a moment. So I'm like, well, I want to go somewhere. Where can I go? And one thing led to another. We had Ben Little that came to speak at our mission Sunday. And I said, one day I'm going to come see you. Well, literally like a week later, I'm like, hey, I'm going to come see you. Like in a few weeks, I'm going to fly out there. And Keller, thankfully, was able to help offset some of my flight to go stay. I stayed with Ben at his home and got to go visit Sabs and preach at Benoni and be with the brethren. And Ben, of course, drove me different places. This is about an hour out of Johannesburg in an area called Ironside, which is having these, again, mass conversions of people that are coming to the church. We have one school that we're focusing on, those who are Christians that come to the school. But what these people are doing is they're training even denominational pastors and anybody who wants to come to just religious classes. And then when they're doing in those courses is they're converting actual preachers and pastors of these churches that are going back and going to their churches and then baptizing many people. It's an interesting approach to missions, but it's leading to a lot of new Christians. And so Ben did the preaching in this lesson here, and there were probably like 7 or 8 baptisms immediately following this lesson. It was wonderful. This is in India. We work with, as of now, 2 schools. It's about to be 4 or 5 schools in India. And Lord willing, in November, I'm going to be going there, and if we can get all the pieces and the funds raised, I might be bringing my favorite travel companion with me, my wife, and we'll see if all that works out, and working with the school in India. This is a place in Monrovia, Liberia. Lord willing, I'll be there next week. And I'm traveling, if you know Paul Delgado, we're traveling there next week. And Monrovia is another place in West Africa, super receptive field. People, the church is growing in leaps and bounds. It can't keep up with it. That's why there's different preaching schools popping up in the area, trying to train people to fill pulpits. And when we go next week, they're limiting the preacher seminar to 50 local preachers. And then I'll be teaching a course on Philippians, and Paul will teach a course on James to about 25 students that are in the school there that we're working with. But I could go on and on and on. Each of those places has a story, has just so much encouragement. When I hear stories, if I were sitting there listening to somebody share some exciting things that are happening in the brotherhood, even though I wasn't necessarily part of it, maybe I prayed for it or I financially helped be part of it, it fires me up because I'm like, yes, look at that. I love it. Praise God for all of that is happening. So I hope that, in a sense, encourages you at the same time. But I want to look at an acronym for a few moments. What we can call SMART evangelism. If you ever make goals in life, personal goals, financial goals, whatever, SMART goals are good ones to do. The acronym of being specific, measurable, is it achievable, is it possible, is it realistic, is it time bound, things like that. When it comes to evangelism, we can have a SMART goal. It's pretty easy to fill in the blanks of what smart evangelism looks like. Specific, we're to go into all the world, preach the gospel. We know what it is that we're sending. We know what message we are. Each place that we go, when I go to Liberia next week or India in November, I don't have to change the talking points, if you will. It's the same. It's the same message, the same good news. I might change maybe the method or understand the culture a little bit differently and how to approach it. But nevertheless, it's to share the gospel with the whole world. Nobody's off limits. There's nobody that's off limits. All people are open. The harvest is all people. Is it measurable? Absolutely. We know how big this world is, and it is massive. But I will say this, though. It's actually, in a sense, becoming a lot closer than we think. It's becoming a lot closer than we think, because I want to let you know that it is actually achievable. This is the optimism in me, because I believe, now, just like in Colossians 1, verse 23, by the time of that writing, it said that every creature under heaven had heard the gospel. I know there's 8 billion people today, but there are things that are happening right now that is making this achievable to do international outreach. With God, all things are possible. This is a realistic goal. With technology, we are so connected right now. I mean, for free, if I had time, I could just show you my WhatsApp app and show you the number of conversations that are happening almost daily with international brethren. There are 2.7 billion WhatsApp users. America doesn't really use WhatsApp as much as the rest of the world does. Or Facebook Messenger, there are 2.9 billion accounts on Messenger. And so anybody who's technically old enough to have Facebook 13 and up, we're talking nearly every human adult, nearly, not all of them, but I can almost call anybody in the world right now, connect via video, text, whatever it may be. We are so connected. I mean, right now we're 30 minutes away from Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, the second busiest airport in the entire world. We could get on a plane tomorrow, and it goes every day. DFW goes to all 50 states, 36 countries, 253 direct flights. I mean, just from Dallas to one spot, let alone just with a couple hubs, we can connect anywhere in 24 hours. That's how small, in a sense, our world is. And there are unbelievable resources at our disposal that I'm blown away when we were talking about this in the podcast today. I'm like, this is how you talk to people. This is how you talk to the places where it's difficult to get into physically, but virtually and technologically, we can. I mean, we can connect with World Bible School, with people from all over the place where maybe my passport might not allow me to get in. The American passport, by the way, it's a good one to have. I mean, the Singaporean, the UK, the American passport, Australian, those are some good ones to have. Right now, we can get into 186 countries with the US passport. And it only leaves a handful that are, and I wouldn't even say you can't go. What I found is it's just hard, extremely hard, and have a low probability of getting a visa approval, but technically you can go to pretty much every location on the earth. Will it be challenging? Will your visa possibly get denied when you try to go to Pakistan? Yes, but can you reapply using a clergy visa and do all the paperwork and pay a little extra money and then hope that you get an email saying, yes, that can happen. And then they email you, and then they say you got 30 days from the time you got this email to get here. And I'm like, oh, I got to go to Pakistan this month, okay. And change gears, and then you can only stay one time for 30 days. And so my whole point is we can do this. It's extremely realistic in the day we live in. With the YouTube and World Video Bible School, not only are there resources, there's good, solid, sound, biblical resources at our fingertips right now. Okay, I got to keep going. And is it time bound? Yes. We'll just keep doing this till Jesus comes. We'll just stay busy. We'll work, and then we'll rest one day when Jesus comes. But so what now? No one is off limits. This is a point I want to make, that there should be nobody that we should write off. This location, we're not going there. That place is too difficult. We can't do that. I don't like the word can't, I'm like, no, I think we can. I think there's got to be a way. When people are like, nobody goes there or has been there. Or, what about those people in those remote areas who've never heard of Jesus? Where? Tell me where. Let's figure this out then. Tell me, maybe the answer to the prayer and the concern is you, actually. Maybe you could be part of the solution here. I hope that we are drawn towards challenging fields, raising funds to help people in difficult areas, drawn to utilizing technology to God's glory. I hope that we can continue to be in the process of gathering and distributing resources and praying for the laborers in the vineyard, and let God do his thing. He will use all of us, beginning in our own homes, beginning in your immediate family, your extended family, local missions, domestic, international. He will use you as much as you will let him use you. That's what I'm finding out. Just watch God work. And so the last 10 minutes, I want to just keep building some momentum here. One of those espresso shots is dying down. You get back in it again. Here we go. I believe, I'll show you 4 quick reasons. I believe we can and we must go into all the world. I believe we can, number one, because it's the church of Jesus Christ that brings people together. It's a church that is the answer. It's the solution to every issue in the world, moral, ethical issue, political issue, boundary issue. It is the bridge between people and humanity. It's the bridge between us and God the Father. John 14, verse 6. This is a picture I took when I was at the Dubai Church of Christ on a long layover, and it was a Sunday, and I was like, well, I'm going to leave, and maybe I can find the church. Long story short, I found the Church of Christ meeting, and they meet at night because it's a work day in the Middle East, but the people come together, and I was able to preach there, and I got a group shot, and I said, where are you guys from? And we counted 9 nations in one worship service. And I was like, that's what heaven's going to be like right there. That's bringing people in. That's the oneness of the church. That's the one body. This is a picture from a few weeks ago when we were at the Newport Church of Christ in Wales. And if you look there, you can't completely tell where everyone's from, but we had people from Scotland, people from Wales, people from England, people from the beautiful country of Texas. We had people from Nigeria, people from Ghana, people from half the congregation demographically was actually African. And this is important because I was telling you about the explosive growth in places around Africa, especially West Africa. There's other places too. And what's amazing, just like Acts chapter 8, when there's migration with faithful Christians wherever they come from, especially our African brethren. I've seen this in London, in Paris, and we were in the Netherlands. We saw this in any congregation I've seen in Western Europe. There's so many African Christians there. I mean, that they live in the Europe, but they've gone there for work or school, whatever reason. But guess what they took with them? They took their faith. And guess, many of these churches don't have a located preacher. Many of them just share the responsibilities of preaching and song leading and teaching and evangelism. And I'm blown away to see the fruit of mission work that has happened in the continent of Africa and how they've taken it, and now they're missionaries in Western Europe. And I kid you not, I mark my words, it will happen here. They'll be coming here eventually with their sincere, zealous faith. And so I just wanted to point that out. It's the church that brings people together. And I've seen it firsthand. There are seeking and receptive hearts everywhere. Everywhere. Not only did I get to see the Lord's church in Pakistan, but I saw 26 people say Jesus is Lord and were immersed into Christ. All in a short trip. And it all comes back to the power of the Word of God being communicated, pricking people's heart, people humbling themselves and making that full commitment. By the way, the retention rates of Muslim background believers, meaning people from Muslim majority contexts, I've done some recent studies on this, the retention rates are like 98%. Whenever somebody becomes a Christian in a Muslim background, they don't fall away. I mean, because they count the cost, like legitimately count the cost before they do this. And so I'm again humbled to see that. I love this picture because even though we were in Western Europe where half the country doesn't even believe in God or struggles with the existence of God, we passed out 1,000 house-to-house, heart-to-heart magazines, customized it with the church information, took brethren from Wales, from Texas, from Tennessee, and they live there, but these brethren are originally from Nigeria. My point is, we had 7 visitors come that Sunday. We had Bible studies with people. We had people actually interested in Christianity. Did we statistically have more doors closed or ignored than open? Yes. But I'm telling you, there was still fruit that came as a result. Number 3, resources are available and are being shared. That's why I believe we can and must be involved in going into all the world. I just show a few snapshots to show I hate asking for like mission support and things like that. But anytime I ask brethren for like specific needs, like I want to help buy a printer for the school in El Salvador, without fail, people come through. The more specific the need and the ask, and the more assistance that I get. This is a container in Mission Printing. Mission Printing has now 4 times in the last few years helped us load up entire libraries with the tracts that they ship overseas, and those libraries are being used in some of the preaching schools that we're working with. I have people that will just say, Spencer, I got 20, 30 laptops. Can you distribute these out? With preachers or Christians, and I'm like, we'll find a home for them and bring it on, donate books, whatever it is that you need. This projector kit, I don't have time to do a full spiel on it, but the highlight is this is an entire school in a box, if you will. And so when we bring these to every international location I go, I bring this from World Video Bible School. They have donors that have given this ability to bring this projector. It's a projector that you can be charged or solar powered or plugged in. And they give us 4 terabytes worth of downloaded materials from World Video Bible School. They have every book of the Bible in video form. So they have every supplemental study. If you're going, they have some in Swahili. So when we went to Kenya, we downloaded the Swahili, in Tanzania. When we go to Mexico or El Salvador, they download anything they have in Spanish. But we give this to them. They don't need Wi-Fi. They don't need a computer. They don't even need a speaker because the projector is a speaker in of itself, and you can navigate it by just plugging it into the hard drives they give you. So we're equipping them with this amazing resource, and I love being able to share these WVBS projector kits to the brethren. You can't read this, but this is an ongoing notepad that I keep on my phone where it's just resources. And it's everything from a Google Drive link that's been a culmination of preachers or preaching schools. I got multiple preaching schools, their entire catalog on one little click. I got entire World Video Bible School link, World Bible School, other websites, commentaries, French materials, Spanish materials, posters, teaching tools, children's. I definitely have the material that's the fruit of Keller Church of Christ and their AP curriculum for children. You didn't hear anything. But I love being able just to text this, to text one link to any person in the world and say, use this to God's glory. I'm not reinventing any wheel. I'm just trying to gather all the resources that we can share. Number 4, people are going. There are people going. I already showed you just how simple it is to go to DFW, and in 24 hours, you are anywhere in the world. Let me conclude for about 3 minutes just showing you a few pictures from a trip we made to Pakistan. This was it was a challenge to get there, just to get to this point right here. Was it God's will? I kept thinking, is it God's will to be here? I mean, I've got the visa denied. Nobody wants me to go. Nobody's wanting to sponsor this. Nobody's wanting to contribute to help with the flights or anything. Is it meant to be? And I thought, it has to be part of God's will. God's will is to go into all the world and to preach the gospel and to share these tools and resources and the good news. And I was thankful. Long story short, I was finally able to be with the brethren a couple months ago, back in March, in Sahiwal, Pakistan. I flew into actually Lahore, and then it was about 3 hours away. And I believe it was God's will to be done. They hadn't had a missionary from the States in 10 years visit them. 10 years. I would say the fear tactics that are used in that religion at times has worked in some ways. This is our church building, though, a beautiful church building. Brethren actually from Florence, Alabama. I was hoping to talk to Corey because I think we had mutual friends on the people who helped raise the funds and establish this congregation and a meeting place for them. We landed at like 5 a.m. I landed at 5 a.m. in the morning, and then we drove like 3 hours, and then it was time for worship. Okay, so immediately had to get at it, and they didn't have a Starbucks, but they did have some like tea I could drink to get going. In Acts chapter 20, verse 7, the Lord's Day worship, people kept coming in the entire time. They weren't on time, but within the 30 minutes, that place went from 60 people to double 120 people. Our brethren meeting right there in Pakistan blew me away. I know one day we drove to the border of India and Pakistan. They do this big ceremony every night, this border ceremony. It's almost like a pep rally. And I was just looking at thinking, wow, this is amazing. I wasn't partial to any country. I was on the Pakistan side, but I have brethren on both sides. And then I just thought about the church. That's Ephesians 2, by the way, verses 14 through 18, and how it's the church. There's no middle wall of partition. It's broken down. We can all become united in Christ. I did go see, the day I was flying out, we were in the capital, so I went to see some of their famous old ruins and some of their mosques. And I thought about this. I could walk in the compound, but they didn't let me inside to go look at their mosque if I wasn't there to worship. Very different than if you go to a European cathedral, anybody's welcome. But I just thought about it from the perspective of Lord's invitation. It's wide open. Anybody, Jesus said, come to me, you who labor and heavy laden, I will give you rest. Wide open invitation. I love going to visit brethren. We were visiting people that had become Christians, but they had moved, and there really wasn't a local church, and they're doing their best to meet together, and we had a good visitation with one another. Some of our brethren in places like India and Pakistan, the most hospitable people you'll ever meet. The most hospitable people you'll ever meet. Romans 12 and verse 13, these were brethren who show hospitality without grumbling. 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 9. Over and beyond humbling experience to be with them. I love being able to visit other churches in Pakistan because they're part of the same body as you and I, which is amazing. I don't know them, but we instantly greet each other with love. We instantly have a bond because we have Jesus Christ as a common denominator. Of course, fellowship meals. I dress up, not because I like dressing up, but because become all things, all people. And if you break down barriers, if Candace goes with me to a place in the Middle East and everyone covers their hair, we'll cover our hair because we don't want to have any issues that keep us from sharing Jesus Christ. You don't wear shoes in the building? I'll take my shoes off, even though I have very white feet. I'm just going to keep going. You do what you got to do. By the way, this is preachers within a couple-hour radius, all there for a preacher seminar. Past graduates of the Sahiwal Bible College, struggling. They're struggling, but they're fighting. They are soldiers of the cross. Again, that's a typo. 2 Timothy 2, verse 3. They are soldiers of the cross. I got to go because I think that bell was within the last 5 minutes. And let me end with this picture, too. The reason why I ultimately went, because I'm like, these are people, though. They're people just like you and me. They have concerns, they have families, they have good days and bad days. They are created in God's image. They are not off limits. If anything, they may actually be more receptive than we possibly think. You think about places like communist China or places where the Bible has been outlawed or places where it was limited, those people are receptive once they can get access to hearing what they were supposedly weren't allowed to hear. They can just be guided into the real story of Isa, Jesus, then they can know about, oh, okay, elders were installed, 26 baptisms. 26 baptisms. It was blown away. Go to every tribe, tongue, nation. I'm supposed to offer the invitation right now. We're going to sing a song. I know people want to get home. It's a school night. But if somebody wants to go up there and get baptized tonight, I'm sure we'll wait a few minutes. I'm sure the person doing it will put on the correct waiter and put the other person in the blue garb, and we will take care of business, because it takes just a moment the rest of your life to live for him. Hopefully you are encouraged. You leave here thinking, we can do this. This is possible. Smart evangelism is possible. Let's sing a song while we all stand and sing.